we're lucky to have Coach Clarke here on game day. The Rams are playing later on this afternoon, so we're going to keep this as tight as we can. She's got to get back with her squad, and nice to see the U Sports season is hopefully back into some level of normalcy, and as opposed to the last year. And we're excited to have Coach Clarke here. So she comes to us, like I said, she's the head coach of the Ryerson Rams out of Toronto, and has done extensive time with Team Canada at a variety of levels, including this last summer in Tokyo. So we're very lucky to have Coach Clarke with us. She's going to be speaking about integrating skill development into your daily practice plan. So I'm going to turn.
Excellent. Huge thanks to Basketball Manitoba for having me. Really, really excited. Been following the Basketball Manitoba Clinic for a number of years. I don't know if it's been all 12. I didn't realize it had been going that long, but yeah, thrilled to be a part of it. And I know Basketball Manitoba always does an exceptional job at bringing great speakers together. And as Adam mentioned, it's game day here with our Rams. So we play at 4 p.m. Eastern. So I wasn't able to tune in for the first speakers today, but I'll certainly be going back and watching the recordings, as I know they were great. And I think Mano and Roy are after me this afternoon. So happy to sneak in between, great lineups before and after me, and excited to be here. Today I'm going to talk about integrating skill development into our practice plan. And a lot of these things that I'll speak about today, it's what we do at Ryerson. So a lot of these examples, and I'm going to try and really give some tangible examples. So, these are all things that we've done in the last couple of weeks, or over the course of our season since we've been back at it. And I think it goes without saying, we've been absolutely thrilled to be back at it after 18 months away. And for us, today is game day number 2. And I think we'll have that much more appreciation all season for every single game day we get. So with that, I will attempt to move slides and make sure I still know what I'm doing here. Okay, great. So the first thing I wanted to talk about with integrating skill development into a practice plan and to your daily practice environment is how we work to build our practice plan here at Ryerson, day to day and month to month and week to week. So the things that we're thinking about in specific to skill development, but certainly in year-round planning as well, is what does our year-long training plan look like? So for us this season, we got back at it in early September as a whole team, and we knew we had about 4.5 weeks until our first game. So knowing that we didn't have any competition to prepare for, those first 4.5 weeks were really around getting our team back to obviously a certain level of fitness and gameplay, and making sure that we to be blunt, I guess, is to remember how to play, remember what our practice environment looks like. And, there was certainly rust there from all angles. And, in a university program, we've got now like this double core cohort of first years, although we certainly, did do a little bit of training last year. We had, a very large core of first and second year players that were really experiencing the environment for the first time. So those first 4.5 weeks or so were really around building our system and building our environment. And that was what we were thinking about. And now we're getting into gameplay. And for us, we've kind of split up our season into 4 or 5 different segments. So that first one being, the foundational pieces of return to play. Now we're in preseason. In a couple weeks, we'll enter into the first half of our regular season. Then we'll have our Christmas break. Then we'll have the second half of our regular season, and then we'll be into playoff mode, hopefully. So, we've kind of broken our season down into those different periods, and, how we build our practices and our week-to-week training are all determined around, when games are and what our load looks like. And that impacts how we integrate skill development into what we're doing as well. So when we're talking about skill development today, I think there's a couple different lenses that we've worked on integrating skill development into our practice plan. That first one is building our system. We came into the season having, a pretty strong plan and idea of what our system was going to look like. And that dictated what we were doing in terms of skill development in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. And now that we're getting into competition and we've got film to review and film in advance of competition, how we plan that skill development may be based on something we learned from competition last weekend, so an area that we've identified for improvement. Or it may be, okay, we're playing these teams this weekend and they like to do this, or this is going to be a point of attack for us, and we'll integrate some type of skill development around what we can expect from our competition. So those are the 2 ways that we really think in practice around building skill development in. And then for us, we've got a weekly breakdown. So, at the university level in Canada in particular, we're dealing with different things. So, at our school, class conflicts are unavoidable at times, and that can dictate what we're doing when. So, our weekly breakdown can change year to year based on who we know we have in practice in certain days. But ideally, we try and build our practice plans and the level of competition and intensity and volume day to day around physical recovery and preparation and mental recovery and preparation. So as an example of a weekly breakdown for us right now, last week we played on Saturday. So we played our game. Sunday was an off day for us. And for us, Monday is at times still a bit of a recovery day. So we also know we've got some class conflicts that day. So that will be, a lighter recovery practice, maybe more heavy in skill development or team concepts, video review, other recovery modalities to make sure we're still recovering and then preparing for the week ahead. And then for us, Tuesday is a pretty heavy competition, team-based practice. We would have a lot of transition in that session. We would have small-sided games, which I'll talk about more later. And then some team concepts, whether there's something new that we want to integrate for the upcoming week or, adjustments, we'll start to introduce those things on Tuesday. Then for Wednesday, it's very similar, still pretty high intensity, moderate intensity, building in those breakdowns and expanding on the concepts that we would have introduced the day before. And then for us, Thursday is usually quick hit, nothing new, quick review of the things we've done for the week in advance of playing on Friday. So that's essentially what our week looked like this week. And, based on those different things, I'm going to go through different areas that will build skill development into. And you'll kind of see how they might fit into a different day of the week for us. And again, those weeks will change, game days will change, but that's what, a general basic week would look like for us. And then in terms of building our daily practice plan, the key things that we really try and focus on is one, what does our daily plan look like? So what are the objectives that we're trying to get out of that day? And usually that's narrowed down to 2 or 3 really specific things. So coming off our weekend last week, we knew that transition defense was an objective, ball screen reads on offense was an objective, and rebounding was an objective. They wouldn't always be the same every single day, but those were our general emphasis for the week, and then we'll adjust them day to day based on what we feel is most important for our preparation. And then one of the things, and I should have prefaced by saying, I don't think anything that I'm presenting today is my own. I've been so fortunate to have been coached by incredible coaches, work with incredible coaches. As my office lights are automated here, I'll have to slide back and forth a couple times, but just been able to work and be coached by so many incredible people. And pretty much everything we do here, I've taken from someone else. So I'll never forget one of the early coaching advice items in practice planning that I received was from Christine Stapleton, who was with Canada Basketball at the time. And she said, your practice plan should read like a book. And that has just always stuck with me. And I think you'll see as I go through the different elements of where we try and incorporate skill development into our practice is how it will read like a book, and everything we do every day is connected to something else that we're going to do or connected to the big picture of what we do. So everything has a big purpose, and that integrates into how we set up and run a practice every single day and throughout the course of the week. So the areas where we work to integrate skill development and practice are literally in every area of practice. And I'll talk about all of these areas as we go through here today. So the first one, warm up. We'll spend a lot of time on, quick hit of skills and warm up. We'll do positional breakdowns, and I'll give some specific examples in all of these areas. We'll do guided shooting and conceptual breakdowns. We use a lot of small-sided games, which I very much consider skill development still. We use a variety of different shooting versions of different shooting things in practice as skill development. I'm still a believer in volume shooting. And then we try and do a lot of game-like shooting as well. And then we'll try and implement some cool down elements with skill stuff as well, and try and be a little creative. And that's another one that's a bit of a quick hit. And then depending on what our day looks like, and I won't dive into this one as much later, but we're not afraid in our practice to say, we've done what we needed to do as a team today. Here's 15 minutes. Grab a coach. What do you want to work on? Grab a teammate. What do you need to work on? And hopefully they have some idea of where they should be spending their time and energy based on their role. So we like to give that self-directed time to spend on the skills by themselves. So for us with warm-up, I've strongly been influenced by Canada basketball with how we warm up, and my experiences with our national team, and have been surrounded by world-class people that are leaders in warm-up. So I think, the traditional warm-up is the dynamic stretch, get physically moving, making sure you do that before you get started. But there's a couple elements that we integrate every single day in a variety of ways. So before we do a dynamic stretch, we typically have a 5 to 6 minute period where we've got something that is getting our team, a little bit sweaty. So it's not full speed, it's not all out high intensity, but it gets them moving before they do their stretch. So in that 5 to 6 minute period, we will do a variety of different things. And that depends on the day, what our objectives are for practice, like I spoke about earlier. And we're always trying to integrate the other elements into our warm-up as well. So as I've listed them here, communication, competition, connection. So even when we're doing skill development in these periods, I think there's ways to integrate these 3 C words that we emphasize every day in a lot of different ways. And then we really like to start with some fun things sometimes. It's not every single day, but we're not afraid to have a little bit of fun, have a little bit of a competitive game in order to just get some energy going in the gym. So again, I'll talk about some specifics with that. I wrote traditional skills here that we will sometimes integrate into warm-up as well. For me, what I mean by traditional skills is like sideline to sideline, you're working on 1 ball or 2 ball dribbling, or you're working with a partner and just going through, I'll say basic passing, but, where it's pretty block and that type of heavy focus. We will throw that sometimes in early in the week, like a Monday type practice day, like I described earlier. But typically most of the skill development that we're doing is falling within, a game-like action or something within our system. So it's the players see exactly how they're utilizing the skill in what they would be using in a game, I guess. So again, communication, competition, connection, that initiates fun, initiates and warm up for us, and really does transfer throughout an entire session. And again, I'll talk about a couple specific things here shortly that we've done recently. But the other thing that we'll do is just games and competitions. So as an example, every Thursday, right now, that's the day before a game, we're typically doing some type of fun, which I would still consider skill development. So yesterday we did what we call line tag. And, we're in a Canadian university gym where there's basketball lines, the main court, the cross court, then there's volleyball lines, the main court, the cross court. And it's basically like Pac-Man. For those of you that are familiar with Pac-Man, where you have to stay on your line. And we identified 2 people being it, and you're staying on the lines and you're trying to chase someone down while you're dribbling a ball. And it sounds really simple. Our team loves it, but we've loaded it now where, when you're moving from line to line or you're changing direction, you have to integrate a dribble move. If 2 people are going towards each other, you can't pass each other. You have to change direction. So, sometimes we'll integrate a retreat dribble to change that direction or get to a different line. So, just thinking of creative ways where they're fun, they're competing, they're moving around, but they're also integrating a skill that might fit into what you're trying to do. And then we also use this time for really specific actions in our offense. So figure out how to change the slide. So here are a couple examples. And again, if we're pre-dynamic stress, these are not full speed, but there's always an emphasis on connection, communication, and/or competition. So these ones are more connection, communication pieces in alignment with this skill. So in our offensive actions here with the Rams, we have we run a lot of get action. And we've got a variety of reads and decisions out of the get action. But you can see it in the drawing here in the first one, in that, we'll have a line with balls here. We'll have a forward line down here. And the connection point is eye contact or communication to initiate the 5 cutting to the top. We'll deliver a pass on time, on target with the proper hand. And then we'll just simply make a basket cut. And then that 5 players got to deliver a basket cut, deliver a pass to the basket cut on time, on target. We score a layup. They can switch lines. Sometimes we'll integrate every player into every position. Sometimes you'll stay within the position you would be within our offense. And again, not full speed, but working on the communication, connection, timing, just to get some energy going and work on, in this case, you're working on passing, cutting, finishing. Really simple, quick hits, but integrate a skill. And, for us, we might direct, okay, this is the finish today. Be creative with your finish today. I think there's a lot of different options that you can use here. And then the middle one I've got is just another one out of the get. So these ones are all without guided defense. But one of our primary reads out of the get action is a rescreen. So in this case, we throw it, the one player follows, gets it back, and the 5 has to pivot, rescreen, and now the 1 uses the screen, and they're working on the proper pocket pass, either on the ground or in the air, to that 5 who's rolling to the rim, and now the 5's getting the finish. So we might do 2 minutes of one, 2 minutes the other. We might just do one of them each day. It might depend on what we think is the point of emphasis for what we're trying to do, or the emphasis for that week, or where we need to get better. And then the last example I have here is, this weekend we're going to face a team that is icing a lot of ball screens on the wing. So this is one we've been doing this week, in preparation for that. Is our 5 would start with the ball. They would throw it to the guard on the wing. They come into ball screen. And on this one, I have X1 on the drawing, which for us would be a coach usually in this scenario. And they're just showing, the angle that the defense would be at, because we spent some time with our read on this one of the 5 flipping their screen and setting a butt screen. And then the 1's working on coming off, cobbing, and snaking off that and delivering a pass to the the 5 who then rolls to the rim. So again, similar concepts. I mean, depending on what you do and what your offense is, you can come up with creative things like this. But again, there's like a connection between the team, a simple skill work, and every day you get 5 or 6 minutes of these types of things. Your players are getting better at using the passes, the timing, the different things that fit in with it within your system. The next area where we spend time with our skill development is on positional breakdowns. And the amount that we use these ones, I think, depends a little bit week to week. And you'll see a lot of similarities or how these things all build together. So like I said at the beginning, for us, our practice plan tries to read like a book. So I just showed 2 examples, the get action and attacking the ice. If we warm up with the attacking the ice, we're probably breaking down or, doing a more competitive scenario where we're then attacking the ice later in practice. We would try to avoid attacking the ice in warm up and then having the defense switch every ball screen later in practice. So you never get to apply the skill that you've been working on. So when I say read like a book, that's what I mean by that. So the second area where we'll do our skill development is through positional breakdowns in practice. So for us, that typically is splitting the guards forwards. We usually only do 2 positions. Sometimes it might be, point guards, wings, forwards. But for us, primarily those 2 spots. And we do have some players that are interchangeable, and we try and move them between different positions depending on, what the focus is that day. And then within the positional breakdowns, we'll spend time on 1 player action, 2 player actions, 3 player actions, again, depending on what we think is the point of the emphasis for the day, for the week, an area for improvement, numbers in practice, all of those things can dictate, how we do that or what we do that day. And then for us, I'm going to, almost every example I give is really around the offensive side and building skills on the offensive side. But I do believe you can build skills with your defense too. And, even if we're just doing guided things, there's good opportunity to build some defensive awareness and understanding and skills within your system as well. And that helps you to make decisions. So, when we're doing these positional breakdowns, again, depending on the time of year, depending on the point of emphasis, they might be things specific to our system that we want to get better at or make sure that we're great at, or they might be scout based. We know that we're going to see this defense or this offense. Let's work on the skill to handle that looking ahead. So just a couple examples. Again, these are all real life examples that we've used recently. We do some horns options offensively, and we've got some really, really young forwards. And even if our forwards weren't young, we would still spend time in this area. So we just had our forwards at one end, and you can see the C here means coach. So we're fortunate to have, a lot of coaches and managers around that help give us some numbers to simulate some of these things. So this example is just literally our 4 and 5 on each elbow in our horns type set. We'll have one side with a guided defender. And, I think there's scenarios where for us, we certainly do some on air skill work, but the majority of things that we do, we try and have a guide present, so that we actually have to work on executing the skill versus the defense, passing around as an example, scoring over, all of those different pieces. So in this one, you can see the 4 has a guided defender on them. And that also works on the skill of, sealing and battling for the position to receive the pass in the high post. So on this one, the coach passes it to the 4 in the high post. And, we are just diving our weak side forward and working on smashing and sealing with proper footwork on a coach who has a blocking pad. And then, the 4's got to deliver a pass into the 5, and we're working on turning and finishing without a dribble. That's my, I think, pet peeve this month is we dribble uselessly all the time. So that's just a short vent from me. But, we were working on doing some things without dribbling down there where all the little players can get in there and take something away. So again, a really simple breakdown drill, but works on, developing footwork, physicality, delivering a pass and finishing versus some contact around the basket. So spend some time on that. Everybody rotates through every position. And then a guard example for us in a positional breakdown might look something like this. So we run some pistol type action. So this one you can see we've got a guided defender on the 2 player, and we've got a couple of coaches. The coach at the top of the 3-point line, that could also be a chair, depending on your numbers, or a cone, depending on how you want to set it up. And again, I think there's lots of different wrinkles that you can find within your own system to do things like this. So we'll blast our 2 to the ball. The 1 works on delivering a pass and following that pass to get it back. And we run our 2 off this flare action. So again, it's just an imaginary screen or a coach, not a real screen. And this is one where we might be working on both sides of the ball. So it's a little bit more physical with the 2 player both on offense and defense, but we might have more of a script in this one where, the 2 defender is trying to muscle early, but then they're sliding under and meeting that flare cutter on the weak side. And I'll talk about some shooting things later where this might be a shot for us. But this drill in particular was, we wanted our 2 to catch and attack that short closeout from their defender. And we actually spent most of our time, and sometimes we'll script this and sometimes we'll give them the option, but where we've got to attack it, and then we're working on a left-hand pass out to the opposite side of the floor. So we do spend quite a bit of time on scripting those types of passes to lead to shots. And, once we feel we get more confident with the skill and the execution against these guided defenders and 1 live defender in this case, then we'll load it up to, okay, can you finish at the rim over the guided or the live defender and the coach, or do you need to make the kick out pass? And we'll work on building those things together. Jumping into the guided shooting and conceptual breakdowns. These ones will be very, very similar to, some of the positional breakdowns, but now we might put positions together. We might build it to be a little bit more guided or load the number of decisions like I just talked about. For us, these are almost always, if not always, just shots and concepts out of our actions. And the biggest changes that we'll make, especially now that we're getting into competition, is to adapt to attack different defenses. So I talked earlier about how, one of our base defenses is switching a lot of things on the ball. But this weekend, we know we're expecting to see some ice coverage or down coverage, whatever you want to call it, on the ball screen. So how are we adapting to attack those different defenses? So we'll start to build these elements into guided shooting and conceptual breakdowns. We will use guides. We will use coaches. We'll use defenders on all 2 or 3 players in the action. Sometimes we might only have a defender and on one of the players in the action. We'll really mix those things up depending on, again, what we want to try and emphasize and get out of it. And then, very similar to the positional breakdowns, in these situations, we'll more often put guards and forwards intermixed together so that they have to interact. And now it's positionals working together, but sometimes it's still separate. And again, like I said, these ones tend to have a loaded number of decisions. So we'll try and give them varying reads, whereas the positional breakdowns, sometimes it's only 1 decision that they're really trying to key on in those situations. So again, just trying to give some really specific examples of the things that we've done. We run a lot of pin down action or stagger action as we have some really, really strong shooters. So And one thing that hopefully you notice in a lot of these, there's occasions where our coaches are passing to initiate something, but more often than not, we want our own players making the passes into the action because they're the ones that have to do it in the game. So often, the skill drill is thought about as, the player using the screen and working on the skill to get into the shot. But I find more and more and more we're emphasizing the passing aspect of that as well, and trying to ensure we incorporate that. So again, we use pin down staggers. Here's an option that we would go through. This one shows a pin down. We could do it off a flare. You could do it off a baseline stagger or pin down. You can just change the angles and whatever fits into your system. But we'll have one offense, and then in this case, we'll try and make it as live a defender as possible. Sometimes it might be guided, but we'll try and make it live. And then there's the decision component now. So as you see on these two diagrams, we've got, the first one, the X3 defender takes the shortcut coming up the inside of the screen, ball side of the screen. So the 3, in this instance, I drew it as a straight cut, but they may have a fade read as well out of this screen. And then the 2's, again, working on delivering the pass on time and on target. And then you see the second diagram where we've got the X3 works to muscle and chase the 3 offensive player off that screen. So now they've got to make the read to curl it nice and tight, try and get that defender on their back. And again, the passer's working on delivering it on time, on target, coming off that curl. This one, we might go all the way to the rim to finish. Maybe it's a pull up, or, maybe it even is a kick out to another pass. But generally, this one's shooting based for us. And, depending on our numbers, we would have a guide on the passer as well, just again, to make sure that everything is as game-like as possible in the skill that they're trying to execute. Here's a conceptual shooting drill that we would do with our forwards. So in this one, we've got a couple coaches, one that would be on offense with the ball, and then we've got a second coach that's providing a guide at the rim. And again, these conceptual shootings will have more reads based into them, whereas the positional breakdowns were typically one read. So on this one, the coach has the ball in the 45 or the swing spot. Our forwards coming to set a ball screen. In this case, there's no guide on that on-ball player, but there certainly could be if you had the numbers. The coach comes off the ball screen and we're working on being dynamic, getting out of the screen, short rolling into that space off the block. And then that second coach that's at the rim gives our players a read. So if they stay in the paint and there's a gap, that's a catch and shoot for us. If they, close out tight on that catch from the coach, then do they have a baseline attack? Do they have a middle attack? And they go to the rim to score. So again, really skill stuff where they're integrating like their movement, their timing, their footwork, but they've got to now make a decision to work on the shot that they're getting. So it's a little less, or requires a little bit more focus and reading within it. And then we'll do conceptual things where, again, we've got our positions combined now. So simple ones for reads that we'll use. This one, you see, we've got 2 cones on the floor. We've got a guided defender on the one with the ball, and we've got a weak side forward on the block. And in this one, we'll use a coach guide again, often just because of numbers or understanding, but that could very well be a player as well. So we'll start our one player with the ball. X1 just has to reach and touch either cone. So now they've created a bit of an advantage. The one with the ball reads it and attacks either direction. And on this, our 5 is working on their spacing and timing accordingly. So initially we'll have our coach guide step up almost every time so that The guard that's attacking has to work on delivering a pass. The 5 has to work on catching it. The coach recovers, and there's a little bit of a finish against contact. And the decision on this one is really reading. In this instance, I have that X1 defender touching the cone closer to the baseline, but if they touch one for the middle, then that attack would go to the baseline instead of the middle, and then the 5 spacing would be different. So again, decision, working on timing and reading off of each other as teammates, and then a passing and a finishing component as well. So now you're starting to see how in warm-up, it was very scripted, on air, repetition of a basic skill, and now we're starting to apply those skills in different ways with not quite live, but a little bit more guided defense and the decision making. And then here's just one more positional mixed that we do quite often based on the things we do offensively. So for us, coach initiates with a reversal pass to the top of the floor. That forward catches it at the top, and we're working on pivoting, so we're getting it to the next side of the floor. And in this case, we've got 2 guided defenders on each of our 2 players, and we're working on the 2 timing their blast cut and making sure that they're getting physical into their defender in order to get open. And this is what we call our dribble pitch action. So rather than just straight pass, follow into ball screen, we start to dribble at it and then we'll flip it. So it's kind of in between pass, follow to ball screen and pure dribble handoff. And, we like this action for a couple reasons, because it still allows for the reject option. But there's a little bit more deception and options as these 2 players start to come together. So we spend quite a bit of time on working on this action. So you see the forward dribbles part of the way. We'll pitch it to that 2 defender that's blasting. And then out of there, we'll make cuts and, we'll either use the ball screen, reject the ball screen, and then work on finding a shot or a pass out of that action. So again, just another way that those 2 positions come together and work together to work on the skill of, again, connection and timing is a skill for me in our stuff. And then the passing and screening, all of these things are skill outside of just like the traditional shooting, passing, dribbling skill stuff. So after we've been through all of that, the other component we'll use, and we don't use all of these things every day. I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but, sometimes it will be one warm-up thing, one small-sided game. Other days it might be positional breakdown, conceptual shooting, going back to, again, that weekly breakdown and what fits into the session or the objectives for that day. But a lot of days we'll end up getting into small-sided games. So however we've built or worked on the skill stuff throughout that day or throughout that week, we're building it to a compete scenario to be able to evaluate the skill that we're trying to use. So, that allows us to assess the execution and decisions against full speed. Again, these things could be positional. They could be positions combined. They could look very identical to the other things that I've already shown you, but they just get loaded to a live scenario. And we will continue to integrate decisions and varying defenses. So, I've referenced the ice that we expect to face this weekend. We might just do 2-on-2 ball screen, icing every ball screen and working on, that attack. Otherwise, it might be like you can switch it, or you can hard hedge it if it's a ball screen. And now you're evaluating how the offense uses their skill to integrate the skills against the different reads and integrate their decisions. And then we really, really try and encourage creativity during these small-sided games. I won't stop it and say, nope, use this pass here. I will talk about passing angles and passing decisions. But I think the players, I really like giving them some creativity to see what they can do to figure out how to make the right pass. And we film all of our practices. So we would get, these sessions on on film to be able to look at it and follow up with them if they need to see like, this decision or this hand with this pass makes it tough. What else can you do here? So, yeah. And at the beginning, I talked about in warm-up communication, connection, and competition. I think you'll like have continued to see those three things show up in all of these, you know, 2 or 3 of them in every single section of our skill development. And this is truly pure competition and working on executing the skills. So a couple of examples that that we would use in this one. This one we've been doing a lot is our 3-on-3 get action. So this is one of the key concepts within our offensive actions out of a variety of scenarios. So, you know, I showed the warm-up drill of where we would just have the 5 and the 1 working on their passing, finishing, connection. This one, we're now live 3-on-3. And again, we may have a couple different constraints or rules to try and get to a different action. But most simply, we'll just flash our 5. Our 1's working on the entry pass to the 5. And we've been running this with what we call a keep a lot. So rather than the 5 giving it back to the 1, the 5's going to keep it. The 1's either making a hard basket cut or a hard overcut and finishing their cut to the rim. And then, you know, we just talked about that dribble pitch action. This drawing, I've got it's just a pass and follow into ball screen, but you know, that's a thing that we would integrate here is the 2 blast, the 5 hits the wing ball screen. And now we're just moving dynamically and playing out of the action. The 5's working on rolling, the 1's lifting behind, and we play 3-on-3 out of that action. And again, depending on what your system is, you can mix things up. You can find your appropriate breakdowns to work on the skill that you want to work on. This one incorporates a lot of different pieces for us, and it's real easy to say, okay, today we're icing that wing ball screen. Some days we'll allow them to get back up top and then play out of that action. You know, and then as you know, our defense, our team is really competitive and they like to play on the edge of saying, okay, I know the drill has to start with the 1 passing to the 5, so I'm going to overplay the pass. And so we'll start to integrate, okay, now you can utilize a dribble handoff or with that wing player. So we'll begin to add and load more and more pieces to our small-sided games. But we'll try to have basic ones like this that we'll come back to and say, this is the D, this is the action we want. And then the team can set it up very quickly and we just flow from there. Okay, so like last or second last thing here, I'm probably talking really fast, but I think we're okay for time, is shooting. And I love shooting. I feel like I never get enough shooting into practice as a coach. And always, you know, sometimes, actually shouldn't say sometimes, almost every day, I feel like I'm overtime with something and then something has to get cut from practice and it ends up being the shooting stuff. But, you know, upon reflection of that as a coach, I've tried to find more creative ways to make sure that we continue to get our shooting in. And a lot of the things I've shown so far, from the positional breakdowns to the conceptual elements, they're ending with game-like shots for us, but they're also working on those other skills of, like I said, timing, passing, screening, et cetera, et cetera. So actually getting a lot of shots out of actions or volume shooting in, and trying to balance all those pieces is sometimes difficult. So we've tried to structure a lot of our shooting to make sure that we're prioritizing that. I think in our country, our shooting is underdeveloped. And I think, you know, at the national level, we've experienced that as a gap for us and something that we need to make sure that we continue to spend more time on. And I think there's also a responsibility on our players to work on their shooting as well and commit to that on their own. But with that, as coaches, we've got to make sure we spend time on shooting and practice, obviously teaching shooting, but then just taking shots. So, one thing that we do in warm up all the time, and it's a competitive type scenario, is we've got 6 baskets in our gym, and we've got 15 players. So we've got 5 groups of 3. They each have 2 balls, and we're just going 5 minutes of shoot and follow. But we'll say, this is your shot. You're shooting 1 dribble pull-ups. You're shooting elbow jumpers. You're shooting bank shots from the block. And it's part of the warm-up part of our practice, but they're getting a ton of reps in those 5 minutes and warming up their shooting. So that's another example of what we would do in warm-up, but shooting specific. We've also started using what I call our shooting cauldron, and I've got stolen lots of different pieces from different people for this one. Basically, we have a board that has 6 or 7 different shooting drills. And, those first 4 weeks of practice, we're doing 1 or 2 of them every single day. So the players know them. They're all timed. So they're like 2, 3, or 5 minute shooting drills with the same shooter the whole time. So if I say we're into 2-minute shooting, I know that's a 5-minute segment of practice, and we'll use that to break up 2 different competitive scenarios in practice as an example. So with any of those drills, we'll record the scores for all of our players. So it's a pretty volume-based shooting, but it gets, some of them have scoring implications based on you can only move if you make 2 in a row. If you miss 2 in a row, you move down or you lose points. So there's some pressure added to the shooting, and obviously there's a time constraint as well. So we've got our board that has all the individual players' scores, and we track it on a spreadsheet, and we know who our best shooters are in practice, who our best shooters are in games, and we evaluate how those things match up. So we're constantly looking at that, and the players have access to it to know how they are or where they fall within the strength of shooters amongst our team. The other way we integrate volume shooting in our practice is just out of our actions. So again, I've showed it with a guide and a decision, but sometimes it might just be we're running a straight cut, and it's the first individual player to make 3 running that straight cut, catch and shoot. And that might be a positional split that one's happening with. We also have a variety of shooting drills that are team competitions. So we'll have blue versus white, and we'll have, they've got to make 10 shots from 5 spots in 5 minutes. So they're competing. Again, there's a rebounding, there's a passing, there's a shooting component and all of that. And these are all timed drills. So knowing in practice exactly how long they're going to take, for me, helps keep it in practice and make sure that we do it. And then one thing I got recently from my former head coach at Bishop's, Rod Gilpin, is game-like shooting. So he shared some things with me, and we took it and adapted it a little bit. But we've created some drills, and we call them 47 and 45 shooting, because that's the number of makes that you're going to get, where they're really, really game-like shots. And by game-like shots, they're moving into specific actions. So on, a lighter practice day, we might have a 20-minute window where we say we're in game-like shooting. We're doing 45 shooting today. And the players know that, it's positional based, but we do have a list of different shots to get to 45 makes, and we count how many total shots it takes them, and then we get a percentage of, they took 81 shots to make their 45. That gives us a percentage. So as an example, with our guards, those 45 makes are 3 makes at 5 spots around the arc. Then they've got 3 makes on each side where they're drifting and relocating to the corner. 3 on each side where they're lifting out of the corner to the 45. We have 3 on each side where they're running off a pin down or a stagger. 3 in each direction where they're running off a flare. And then 3 in each direction where they're receiving the ball off the get. So if my math is correct, I believe that's 45. So that they've got, with a pair, they've got 1 or 2 balls, and they know they've got 20-minute windows, 20-minute window to get those makes done. And our best shooters are getting that done in under 20 minutes. Some of the weaker shooters aren't getting there yet, but that's the landmark for us. And positionally, we may make some modifications. So rather than, receiving a get for our forwards, they might be pick and popping. So there's a few amendments there to shoot positional play, or to best suit players of different positions. And then obviously we'll do positional split shooting. I kind of talked about that out of actions yesterday. To finish practice, we are simply going dribble baseline. We're working on throwing the drift pass, catch and shoot 3 in the corner, relocating there. We'll say first individual to make 3. So again, there's a little bit of connection in there. There's competition, and it's a game-like shot for us. And then sometimes we'll do positional things together as well, where there's actions with multiple shots. So I showed the action earlier where we were in penetrate, pass to the post against guides. Sometimes we might just do that on air, where we're working on the post gets that shot off that pass, and then the penetrator, they've got an exit cut and they'll receive a second pass, so that multiple players are getting shots out of our actions. So that's a lot in the shooting category quickly. And you could probably spend a whole session on how to integrate shooting skill development into practice. But those are the variety of ways that we try and do it regularly. And every day is a little bit different. Finally is cool down time for us. And this is hit and miss and day to day. And, a lot of these little things that we do have come from one of our assistant coaches, Vadim Levin, who has a really creative mind. And, for us, we're finishing an intense practice. We want to keep them moving for just about 5 minutes. We'll do really, really simple things where they're just, moving around the gym, and they might have a partner and a ball, and they're just working on different passes they're throwing to each other. So it might be like off the bounce, behind the back, off 1 foot, different release points, really low intensity. They're connecting with a teammate. They're having a little bit of fun, but still working on a skill that might come into play someday. And within all of these things, we really, really try and emphasize the creativity piece of it. And there's certainly certain things that we will try and emphasize, but I find myself not overly locked in with, you must use this skill in this place, but put them in a position to experiment and figure out what they need to do to be able to execute in those different situations. So I think that is it for what I have today. A lot of different things in different spaces, but hopefully some takeaways for everybody to think about.
Super, thanks, Coach. We've got some questions and I've got one that was texted to me directly. So if you're still got the time and your light's not going out, that must get annoying after a while.
It does. Depends where I'm sitting.
Great. So I'll just go through, and if there's any other questions from coaches, now's your time to throw it in. But we'll go through the order here. We've got a few of them here. How long would your typical daily practice last? That's the first question.
Good question. We are capped at 2 hours with our gym time. And that would include warm up and cool down for us. So, at most we're 90 minutes of live activity, and that's probably on the high end.
Okay. It was just a comment. I don't know if you want to expand on this anymore, but just a comment from Hervé here a while back. A great point about the player passing versus coach passing and drills. We might do it as coaches to have more reps on one side, but we miss the passer's work on this in this case, which I agree, that's a good point. But anyways, if you want to expand on that, if not.
Yeah, actually that triggers another point that I meant to make at some point that I'll throw in now is, one thing that I try and be hyper aware of is what side we're starting drills on. And like we will do the majority of time. So like often even split, but sometimes slightly uneven split where we're getting more repetitions with our weak hand or to the weak side of the floor, because I just find it to be glaring that players are so comfortable on the weak side. So we'll start things, the majority of players are right-handed on the left side of the floor or having to execute the skill with the left hand the majority of the time.
I would even expand on that question or that point of, this is my own question or what are your thoughts on this? Because I've heard mixed reactions over this. It's a simple part of starting a drill, but a lot of times the coach themselves will take the ball and purposely miss a shot, sort of like we start off of a missed shot or a defensive rebound, about having the coach take that missed shot, or I've heard then, because you're telling that player to forcibly miss a shot, which is probably not a good thing to plunk in their head, but any comment on that, or is that it's sort of similar to what this is about with obviously with just shooting though?
Yeah, I would say similar. Again, we're fortunate to have a lot of different coaches. But it's funny how when you're trying to miss, it goes in all the time. I think there's
it's true.
Like, can you miss?
So just tell your players, take those shots, and you want to miss those shots, and they'll go in. Of course, that's the way it works. Moving forward, what are some of your favorite ways to develop one-on-one ability, shot creating and scoring ability within your own practice time?
Yeah, great question. I think the things that we've started to do the most is play one-on-one. It sounds super simple, but we play one-on-one, and we'll do that with, maybe different constraints from time to time, as you only get so many dribbles, or, just putting them in different situations. So maybe it's attacking a short closeout, it's attacking a long closeout. And one of the cool down things that we'll do for fun sometimes with a partner as well, which isn't live one-on-one, but I think it's a really fun one where it's just, one partner has the ball, they throw it to someone else that's on the perimeter, and whoever passed the ball picks the countdown that they want. So maybe it's like 5, 4, and that offensive player just is creative. They can do whatever they want. Step back, attack the rim. Sometimes it might be 2, 1, and they've got to just like jack it. And you just encourage creativity in that time. So variety of different ways, but yeah, just playing one-on-one and putting the pressure on both sides of the ball for us is, whether it's like a stationary start or a closeout start, is the way that we do it the most.
Great. I have another question here from somebody who missed the start of the session, so that may have been covered, but I'll ask it anyways. Do you spend any time teaching what guided defense is if you have players doing it? If so, how do you do it? Guided defense.
Yeah, I think we'll just put them in a certain position and say, like, this is the angle, and sometimes there's the correction that's happening during the live play. But as I've talked about the creativity and the decisions, what I like about where our team's at right now in the environment is, if the guide doesn't give them the right read, then they're going to take what is given to them. So I think that allows the defense to learn as well. So, in truth, I try not to spend too much time teaching guided defense, but it does help with some understanding of like angles and body positioning, which does tie to our defense.
Okay, great. I see W. McCullum with your hand up. Is that a question you're asking, or if you want to lower if it's by mistake, which there we go. A lot of times people hit that button by mistake. Okay, we have one last question, and I know you got to get to your team with the game today. Last question we've got is, what are some of your go-to transition drills for skill development?
Great. We've got a few. Most of them are really live things. But traditional, I call it 5-ball drill because that's what my coach called it. I think different people call it Canada shooting, where it's like outlets on each side of the floor, and the outlet gets it and hits ahead, and then there's 2 trail shooters. That's one of our go-to ones, and we've loaded and adapted that one in a lot of different ways. So like the traditional is just the continuous layup shot. But we've started to put some coach guides in where you've got to work on like throwing the pass over the top of that guided defender to like lead your teammate to a layup. We also will add like a drag screen or penetrate pass or 2 penetrations, so it simulates that flow and spacing. So that's one of the most basic ones. And then more often than not, we do a lot of 2-on-1, 3-on-2, 4-on-3 continuous. But for me, any transition drill that we do, 99% of the time it has you play offense and then you're transitioning to defense, as opposed to playing defense and transitioning to offense. I mean, both things are happening, but often some transition drills have you playing offense and then being out of the drill. That doesn't happen for us. You play offense and then you are transitioning to defense. And I find those things to be the most realistic in being able to use skills. So yeah, like don't spend a ton of time breaking down transition skills. Do it more in those small-sided and advantage drills.
All right, and I have one more that came into you by text just right now. It's a big picture kind of questions. With all your years of coaching, what number 1 advice would you give to a new coach just starting out?
Wow, how do you pick one thing?
Has to be one, just one.
I would say, one thing that resonates with me and is just like, you don't know what you don't know. And I think, sometimes coming in blind is really great, but have some awareness that you don't know what you don't know. And I would just say on top of that, encourage every new coach to be open to receiving feedback and to finding ways to grow and improve. I know for me, that's where a lot of my passion lies and why I love it. But as young coaches, being able to do that and being able to take on any role to be in the gym with other great coaches, I would say like jump on any opportunity you can get. So I think that was actually like 4 things, but hopefully some takeaways there.